Hi, I'm Pippa Cossens, registered osteopath and SERPA practitioner. I wanted to talk to you today about COVID, really. We're at a slightly a gateway, a turning point in the pandemic in some respects. We had the lockdown in March and then things were eased a little bit over the summer, and as we come into winter, we're not really quite sure what's going to happen, what's going on. And whilst I'm not a virologist or a chief scientist, I do have some understanding through both my osteopathic training and my stress illness training and chronic pain training of actually how the body reacts in these sort of scenarios. And I think we've got to the point where we're really quite tired of this, and it's becoming quite wearing, and there's all the uncertainty, and I think as we come into winter, people are worried about that and how long we can sustain being, locked in or not locked in, and the slight confusion of information. And I think that's becoming incredibly wearing, and it's kind of becoming quite it can be quite difficult for some people. And I think, like many of us on that sort of corona coaster, some days are okay and some days it's really, really hard to manage. So what I wanted to do was just pop in today and share with you some information that I got the other day from a webinar with a doctor from the States, Dr David Hanscom. Dr David Hanscom is he was a spinal surgeon and is a chronic pain recovery specialist. And he has produced with some peers an evidence-based document about the actions that we can actually take to help us through the next few months, particularly in relation to COVID. So one of the things we now know, or one of the theories we now know about COVID, is that the people that seem to suffer worse with the symptoms may have a higher level of cytokines. Cytokines is a protein in the blood, and it's there to, get a reaction within our bodies when we are faced with a threat such as the virus. But we have pro-inflammatory cytokines and we have anti-inflammatory cytokines. And what it appears is that if your levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines are slightly high anyway, then you are possibly more likely to be affected by the virus than people whose levels of pro-inflammatory cytokines are lower. So how what does that mean, and what can you do about it? Well, what Dr David Hanscom, his document that I will put in the comments underneath this video, his document called Plan A to Thrive and Survive COVID-19 looks at many aspects of things that you can do simply at home that actually will lower your pro-inflammatory cytokines. And if you do that, then if you did come in contact with the virus, then there is a likelihood that you may be affected less badly by the virus. I can't promise that, but all these things are things that we are already recommending in our mind-body toolkits to help the body generally to relieve the symptoms of stress, and actually to relieve chronic pain. Now, what happens is when these cytokines are high, we get more inflammation within the body, and that can lead to chronic pain. So essentially, this is a sort of a dual attack, really, and both things kind of work the same. So, as I say, quite a lot of the information in some form or another is already in our toolkits on the website, in the resources section, and particularly in the mind-body toolkit. But what I will do, as I say, is post the document that David Hanscom and his colleagues have produced so that you can have a read through if you want to. So one of the things we need to do really is actually just to reduce our anxiety and reduce our stress. Now, it can be easier said than done, but what I'm going to talk to you about now is a few things that you can do very simply, as I say, to just start to make a difference in that. And what I think that does too is it gives us some sort of empowerment in what is a really uncontrollable situation that we, as I say, we don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if we're going to get it. We don't know if we've had it. We don't want to give it to anybody. We're not really sure what we're supposed to do. And I think it's really important to have some sort of proactive tools that hopefully will mean that if you do come across it, you won't be so affected so badly, but also will decrease your stress and anxiety levels anyway and make your body more healthy. So talking about anxiety, anxiety is like a threat. It's essentially stress causes it. it is what keeps us alive. It keeps us alert. It keeps us able to make sure we're going to, not run in front of a car or whatever else. But actually, when it's dialed up a bit too high, it really, really doesn't help. So a technique that David Hanscom taught us the other day in the webinar, which was really great, is actually, first of all, just to take a really deep breath. And then just take another and let your shoulders relax. Already you should be able to find yourself just starting to feel a little bit calmer. Sometimes when we're in a really big anxiety moment, it is quite difficult to start to dial it down. But in the toolkits, the Wellbeing Toolkit on our website, there is some different breathing exercises, and you should be able to find one in there that is suitable for you. One of the simplest ones is what we call deep belly breathing, and with that you breathe in for 6 and then breathe out for 6, and you can continue to do that. And what this does is it has an effect on the chemicals within the blood, and that it internally tells the body that it needs to calm down, because it's looking at the carbon dioxide and oxygen levels within the blood. That can help to decrease the stimulation of the sympathetic nervous system and calm through the vagus nerve. So that is a really, really simple way of just starting. If you find yourself in a slightly anxious, situation, it's a really, really good way of starting to calm down. The other technique that he taught us the other day that actually really kind of rang a bell with me and really kind of felt quite useful was to actually, as you feel yourself, even in the moment, actually, if you ask yourself now how much stress you're feeling in this moment, how anxious you feel, and if you imagine a thermometer on the wall with a ball at the bottom and going up the wall, and it's numbered 1 to 10, and sort of 1 is like, actually I'm not massively anxious, everything's okay, and if you go up the wall and you go to when things are really bad, you're kind of reaching panic attack, you're kind of 8, 9, 10, whatever. So if you just kind of visualize that within your brain and just sort of see where you're at on the dial, how far up the red thing is, or you can use a dial with going round a dial, just sort of see what number you're at. And just while I carry on talking, if you want to just kind of imagine that level coming back down. So just literally with that visualization, you can actually start to dial down your stress response. You can start to just reduce those anxiety levels. And as you do that, your body doesn't know that what your brain is telling your body to do is relax, and your body doesn't know that it's not an external force, it's an internal thing. And as that internal stress, as you calm it down, it actually has the effect of changing the hormones within the body and allows your body to relax. So again, just as I'm talking, if you want to just dial down wherever your anxiety levels are, and you might want to do that in combination with deep breathing. One of the other things we need to do at the moment that is really important is to look at our sleep. So sleep is key. We do a lot of our healing in our sleep. Our tissues recover. Our nervous system is able to process all the things it needs to process in our subconscious, and it allows us to relax. And quite often when we get anxious and agitated and we're worried about things, actually our sleep goes out the window, then we become tired, fatigued, and it's a whole vicious circle. So some of the things you need to do with regards to sleep is ensure that you have kind of good health hygiene, which is basically sleep hygiene, which is really kind of how you go to bed. So making sure that you don't you spend a lot of time just before bed looking at your emails or looking at Facebook or things that are very stimulating just before, like even with the blue light on the phone. You might not want to take vigorous exercise just before bed, but actually doing some calming Tai Chi or some yoga just before bed might be really useful. Some people find things like essential oils very helpful. Meditating at bedtime, again, is a really, really useful technique. Making sure in your bedroom that there are no stimulating blue LED lights, and as little light from outside as possible and as little sound as possible. And just kind of the same routine, and trying to go to bed at a similar time so that you don't get overtired and then over-adrenalised and can't get to sleep. So just as I say, whatever suits you. Personally, I actually find some Qigong, Tai Chi type exercises incredibly helpful sometimes before going to bed, and that means you can just start to relax, do some deep breathing, and get some good sleep, and that will improve your health and reduce your pro-inflammatory cytokines. The other thing too that's really, at the moment, it's really, there's lots of things that's really triggering. Again, watching the news, it's really recommended that actually, if you do watch the news, watch it earlier in the day, but maybe only watch it for 10, 15 minutes, or just check the headlines. Don't get too embroiled in it. There's so much opinion out there, and it can make you cross and upset and angry, and it's it is, a lot of it is opinion rather than necessarily fact. And also, unfortunately, the language being used at the moment is terribly, terribly catastrophizing. It's, everything is, the end of the world. And I think that doesn't help. So actually, in some respects, there's often stuff that there's so much information we don't need to know. So do check it if you need to, but actually kind of stay away from it if you can. And the other thing with that is social media again. Very often, people get rant and get very cross on social media, and actually you can get very embroiled in that, or checking or feeling, really wounded by something that somebody said. So again, maybe limit that, or, just limit the people you follow just at the moment, or, I'm not saying, take yourself away from people, but I think sometimes just maybe don't engage massively with the channels and things that trigger you. Anything that's going to keep you kind of calm, and step away from any sort of drama, really, if you can. And one of the other things you can do to counter that is kind of to practice gratitude. We do have a video on our YouTube channel about gratitude, and just if you can keep a gratitude journal, and at the end of the day just write 3 things you were grateful for in the day, because actually the feeling that you get inside when you feel that gratitude, gosh, it was so lovely that my neighbour brought around that shopping for me. Oh gosh, I'm so pleased that my children had a lovely day at school. Whatever it happens to be, that you feel the gratitude. Actually, if you feel that in yourself and you acknowledge that, you actually that again, it starts to change the chemicals within the body and actually allows the whole system to calm down. So again, practicing gratitude and forgiveness is a really, really important factor. An easy thing to do, takes a few minutes. Another thing that you can look at, again on a practical level, is diet. So there are foods that are more inflammatory and there are foods that are less inflammatory. To make it less complicated, what we tend to recommend is just eating very little processed food. So if you can cut processed food out as much as possible. And very often, the more processed it is, the more ingredients it has. So if you can make something that's got or have things that have got less than 5 ingredients in, then they are likely to be less sort of inflammatory. Alongside that, it is worth reducing your sugar and your alcohol and your stimulants, anything that's going to kind of G the system up. So, kind of real food, fruits, vegetables, protein in the form of meat and eggs, some dairy, some wheat, it's fine, unless have something that particularly triggers you, but just keeping things down, anything that's kind of, the more processed it is, the less of it you need to eat if possible. And again, what that does is it enables your system to just be more calm and less irritated. David Hanscom in his document talks a little bit more about fasting and things like that. I'm not going to talk about that now, but you can have a look at that within the document. So all of these things are going to help you to calm your nervous system. So we talk about it sometimes about how full is your rucksack or how full is your bucket. What you don't want is your bucket overflowing. You kind of want to have some reserve in there. So you only want your bucket kind of half full at all times. And that may mean that you have to change some of the things you're doing. It may mean that you have to say less slightly often to people, oh yeah, no, I'll do that, I'll do this, I'll do the other. Just at the moment, and just maybe for the next 6 months or so, although it's not a bad idea for life generally, is to actually cut down a little bit, so that you've got time in your life to look after yourself, time in your life to find joy, to play, to do the nice things. I don't know, sit down and have family night and play a silly board game that you haven't played for 20 years, or sit around the table and have date night. These nice things, and less the sort of the busyness things, the things we tick off to make ourselves sort of feel like, oh yes, I'm achieving because I'm really, really busy. I think just at the moment we need to do everything we can to keep calm. And I just want to mention the toolkits again at this point, because on the website in the resources section we have 4 toolkits: the mind-body toolkit, the well-being toolkit, the exercise toolkit that isn't quite finished, and the children's toolkit. And the mind-body toolkit and the well-being toolkit and the children's toolkit all have in them exercises and things that you can do to just help calm down your nervous system. And the more you calm your nervous system, the less full your bucket is. So essentially that might be, there are some Tai Chi exercises in there. We've got some examples of meditations you might want to do. There's some Qigong exercises in there, EFT, emotional freedom technique tapping, a lot about what's going on in the stress response and sort of things to understand, getting moving, all those sorts of things that are really, really helpful, just to, again, think about calming the whole system down. When you're not feeling calm, and I think sometimes we distract from that, we get really, really busy and we watch the telly, or we do another thing, or people even exercise to stop them sort of feeling the feelings and feeling that calmness. And it is quite difficult at the minute, but anything you can do, even 5 minutes sitting in the sun, anything you can do just to calm that system down. But as I say, do have a look around the toolkits and see what's in there for you. And if you want any advice from that about them, do give us a shout. The other thing you can do, again, which is really, really beneficial to the body at the moment particularly, is to keep moving. So not all the time, obviously not manically, but actually still getting out and doing 30 minutes of sort of aerobic type exercise every day, walking, swimming, riding your bike is incredibly helpful. And also actually it's really great to get into the fresh air and get into nature. There have been quite a lot of studies now that show how beneficial that is to calming our nervous systems. If you're struggling to keep moving, then from an osteopathic perspective, we're really happy to help give you advice from that, or actually treat you to help you get moving. Make sure that you are staying on top of any medical issues that you have. Make sure that you've got your supply of medication. I know at the moment it's quite hard to actually see your doctor. But if it's a pain-related thing or something, health-wise, then we are really, really happy to help. We're finding actually we're supporting quite a number of people at the moment who are not necessarily being able to see their normal medical practitioners. And as medically diagnosed, medically qualified practitioners, we are able to diagnose things and kind of point you in the right direction. So that might be, we might actually say, no, we really need to get you an appointment with your doctor, or it might be something that we can advise and help you deal with. So do use us for that. So again, I've talked a little bit about this, but again, relaxation. So at the moment, if you could spend 10-15 minutes every day just trying to calm your whole system down as a sort of an activity, if that makes sense, then I think that would really, really be beneficial to keep those cytokines down. So if there's anything we can do to help you, and as I say, I'll put the whole document into the comments underneath this video so that you can see all the things that David Hanscom and his peers talk about. Do have a read around. If you've got any questions, do ask us. And as I say, if you can use us to support you in any of this, do just email or get in touch, and we can see if we can help guide you. It is, I think, going to feel like a little bit of a long winter, but as I say, if you can do something positive every day to help your well-being, then I think actually, we'll get through this together. Take care.